All right, thanks everybody for the patience. We are gonna hop back in with council comments and updates. Councilors, any updates from boards and commissions? Yeah, Councilor Shumway.
I met this week with the Traffic Safety Commission, and they're very concerned about the restructuring of the boards and commissions that the city council is working on. There is, I don't know how to put this kindly, but they're in an uproar. They're not happy, and they feel like that they're better off. They're not in a position. They don't feel like that they're in a position to be a very effective advisory board. So they formed a subcommittee, and I'm on that subcommittee. We're going to be meeting with them. I tried to. Well, you were there, Nancy. I tried to just say, you know, your position is much like the cabinet of the president. You don't make the decisions to, you know, if you're on the defense secretary, you don't send troops into Iraq. But what you do is you study everything from the community comments, and you try to gather all this up, summarize it, and give us, in the city council, things that we can work with. But they want to be more involved in engineering and development and things like that, which I think that the way it's structured now, where's Aaron? Yeah, that's what we tried to stay away from, is trying to have them be an advisory board instead of a position which we've been elected to do, and that's handle the funding and the operations and things like that. So that's going to be a kind of a interesting discussion. They're very concerned about the restructuring that's been in our council goals for boards and commissions, and so that's a work in progress, and I'll be bringing back more to you in the future. I know when they asked for officers, it was almost like no one was going to, the former president had to nominate herself because everybody was just saying, we're ready to fold up the tent and move. So anyway, there's a bit of concern there, but it's something that I think that, we have the people on that board are really, I think, will become reasonable once we sit down and let them know that they have a value that we will listen to, and that we'll try to make sure that they have a reason to exist and not just not just a rubber stamp. Nancy, was there something you came out of that with that I'm misstating or overstating?
Mayor, through you, I believe you summarized that pretty well, Councillor Shumway. Basically, just feeling a little lost on what their purpose is right now and how to be useful to the city.
Councilor O'Doherty, and then I see your hand up as well, City Manager. But
yeah, with respect to that, my understanding when we reformed the board was that they would take public input and provide it to the engineers, but all they're allowed to do is see what the engineers are going to do, and then they don't even get to vote on whether they think it's a good idea or not. I was like, well, I'd like to know what you guys think of this idea, and they were shut down. Like, doesn't matter what they couldn't even vote on whether they think it's a good idea. Not like, because they're an advisory council, so they should be able to tell us, we think that's a good idea, or we don't think it's a good idea, but they weren't allowed to even vote on that. So I would just ask, do you think it's a good idea? But apparently that is not the scope of the Traffic Advisory Committee. They really just get to hear from the engineers. And so you can see why that doesn't make them feel like it's a good use of their time.
Let me just say something about that, Councilor O'Doherty. If they reach the point where they start having to review every engineering project, every development product, we're going to be putting the projects in the city of Laramie behind by months, because they again are advisory. They're not the ones that start and stop projects. They can talk to engineers, they can give them their ideas, but as far as being able to determine what the engineers do and don't do, that's the city council and the city manager, not them. As per present.
But they're not even asked their opinion. So so they feel like, what are we doing here?
Okay, and that's why we have this subcommittee, because we're going to find a way in which they will feel empowered, that they will feel like that they have a voice that will be listened to. And so I think we can do that. I think that's what we want to have happen. I'll bring that back to you, but when we restructure this, we can't just have, somebody that says, gather stuff, report it, and you're done. Don't talk to us anymore. So we'll see what happens. I think there's some things that we can do that will really use their talents and their what they're doing to our benefit.
City manager?
Thanks, Mayor, for letting me jump in. I realize this is council updates, but I thought I could bring some context to what Councillor Shumway has reported. I also was made aware of how that meeting proceeded, and I've been reviewing the meeting. Haven't gotten all the way through it yet, but based on the reports of staff who were there, I would ask that Councillor Shumway, I'd love to sit down with the subcommittee and work with them. I have been working with staff for a couple months now to think about how do we restructure the agenda to meet the actual authorities and powers and assignments within the bylaws for the Traffic Commission? And I do agree. I think there is a disconnect, or there has been a disconnect from items that were historically presented to items that would now be appropriate to move through Traffic Commission that maybe have never been moved through Traffic Commission before. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I certainly feel from what I've heard about that meeting that the volunteers aren't feeling utilized to the full extent allowed under their bylaws, and I would agree with that. I'd also let the council know, as part of the goals that you have adopted, there is at least one and maybe two goals where I anticipate taking those before Traffic Commission and seeking their advice and input in accordance with their bylaws. So I think there's substantive work coming their way, and I also do think there isn't very good clarity about their role. For instance, one of the questions raised at the meeting pertained, as I understood it, pertained to how come we, the Traffic Commission, weren't given the pavement condition index data that went to City Council. And I have to tell you, on a strict review of the bylaws, the condition of the pavement isn't really in their purview. But these other projects that you've queued up through your goals really are, and I think they're going to be able to bring some valuable input to you and to city staff. So I just want you to know I'm working on that. And Councillor Shumway, if it's acceptable to the subcommittee, I'd love to sit in on some of that. And I've started the conversation with Public Works Engineering and the City Clerk's office about taking forward that sort of reorientation about the bylaws and how we move forward.
City manager, this is Joe Shumway. We just did a doodle poll to pick some dates for that subcommittee. It will be a public meeting, so you're certainly invited and certainly welcome, because that would, I think, again, tell them, that we're listening, we want their input, and we want to make sure that this is, and what they provide is a valuable service to the city. Thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think we definitely have some growing pains, or I shouldn't say growing pains, changing pains from the old bylaws to the new, but I think we can get there, council. And if you all have other comments, I'm happy to talk to you about those offline or by email as we move forward to try to fix this.
Okay, we're gonna just close that one down a little bit, get back to council updates, and I think maybe we need to have, obviously, a bigger conversation about the Traffic Commission at some point in the future when the subcommittee has finished. I suppose maybe we have a work session at that point, or see.
For all the boards.
Yeah, sure. And so we're gonna go back to council updates or council comments. Councilor Shumway, did you have any others? Okay. Councilor Richardson.
I can update on Laramie Main Street's most recent meeting, just a few events that they have upcoming that y'all might be interested in. And I am now realizing I don't have a date written down for. However, the International Flavor Fest is coming up April, I might be making this date up, but I think it's April 6th through the 11th. you might want to double check me on that. And they are, so downtown restaurants are going to be collaborating with students, international students. It should be a really fun event. They're also going to be, some of the restaurants are going to be incorporating like a dance night, movie nights, karaoke, things like that. So that is coming up. They are also, the Pop-Up Art Walk will be also happening here in the next couple of months. I'll send you those dates as well, because somehow I don't have that date written down either. I'm not sure why. I thought I'd just remember those in my head. And then they are also, they've had some good discussions about some of the fundraising events that they had this year, and some discussion also, as always seems to be the case, about parking, and there are going to be some discussions held in the next 2 weeks with some businesses downtown regarding that. So that's a quick update there. LPAC also had, Laramie Public Art Coalition also had their meeting last Friday, and just recap, they're having some classes for community members led by local artists that have been really successful. I have not been able to attend one yet, but they look fantastic. And the hope is bringing in those artists a little bit more and finding that local talent, even from artists who might be participating, to then open up some more options for public art as they work. Let's see. They also are thinking more about their fundraising strategies, and with the gateway funding that we now move toward Main Street, and LPAC will begin thinking about what that could look like. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other updates, Council? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Had a meeting with the Board of Health, and there were no issues. All of the facilities inspected passed. A meeting with the Albany County Mental Health Board, as well as a meeting with the subcommittee that's been formed from that board, which is a crisis response team, and it's a group continuing to investigate the implementation of a co-responder model. But it's expanding also into looking at officer mental health, officer support, et cetera. And toward that end, the Albany County Sheriff's Office, you may have read this, has received a $181,000 grant to set up a critical incident debriefing system for officers when they encounter something that really should be processed and not just stuffed inside. And the hope is that this leads to better mental health among officers and reduces their stress that they have to deal with. The chief of police has turned over the data that is free for him to turn over to Dr. White, and it's a lot more than what she was even anticipating. And the chief and Dr. White think that it's going to be very beneficial to do evaluation of these data that come from police reports and their process. And once she gets that loaded, the chief is looking to query the data with things that will be valuable for him and the operation of the police department. Oh, good, you found him. And so that's very exciting that things continue to move forward. And Chief Brown also has been working actively with Kristen Cavello, the director of VOA, in looking at some of the mental health issues, how we handle mental health. The hospital is working with us. So like we saw tonight, it is turning into a community collaborative effort, and it's really inspiring to be able to be a part of that. So it's not us and them, it's all of us working together to see how we can best serve the community. And the last is Planning Commission. We had one issue of looking at the Laramie proposal for a 55-unit subdivision, and I believe that that's been updated, that the county has denied their request about the road, but the Planning Commission had some significant concerns about the aquifer, and that the Sand Hills faults run through that property, and that the plat map was structured in such a way that the faults were represented as a single line with 100 feet to either side. So it's kind of an arbitrary line and did not incorporate the data that's been generated since 2009. And so they wanted them to maybe think more about that, and they decided we want a yes or no. So then they denied, they did not support the application. There were other concerns about sewer piping, the design for the piping going right over the faults that are on the property. So with the county now denying the road that they wanted access to, I don't know that we'll get that or not. The second thing that planning worked on, there was a request for variance where an individual on the west side, in West Laramie, had built a carport without getting a permit, and it violates a number of ordinances. They labored over it and really tried to consider the individual, but there was concern that if that was granted, it would set a precedent that could cause significant problems in the future of others wanting equal treatment. So it was ultimately denied. But I want to commend the Planning Commission for the thought and consideration that they put into it and toward the applicant. So anyway, that's the end of my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
That's a question.
Yes.
Was there a recommendation to remove the carport?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other updates? Okay. Go ahead,
I have just one.
Councillor Shumway.
I will be attending the WAM Region 1 meeting on Thursday in Cheyenne, and I know they invited our city manager, and she's unable to attend, so I'll bring back a summary of that meeting, which should be, it's scheduled for two hours, and I'll bring back a summary next time on that meeting from WAM.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for serving on that board. It's very helpful for the city. All right, folks, we will move into agenda review. unless anybody has a comment. Okay. It's a pretty short agenda. Go ahead and cruise through the consent agenda real quick. If you have any questions, we can get after those.
Mayor.
Yeah, City Clerk.
If I could just let you know, there's been an update on original ordinance 2055. We're going to put it on the regular agenda instead of consent for the reason that it was brought to our attention today that there were a couple of small amendments in the preamble that they wanted to make. So we're going to ask for you for a short amendment to the preamble.
Okay, thank you. Where will that end up on the, it doesn't matter. We'll get through this one just fine, I think.
My thought, Mayor, was probably after your amendment to the citywide storm drainage.
Okay, that's fine.
If that's okay.
Sure. Unless council objects to that, but I don't imagine you do. Councilor Doherty, you took a deep breath, and I thought she's going to object to this.
I'm not objecting to that. I was just wondering,
Go ahead.
it's about the regular agenda, but you
That's
haven't gotten
fine.
there yet.
We can slide right into the regular agenda here, too.
The open container, is that for the summer, like last year?
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to just do it all the time. Okay, good,
Yep.
thanks.
All right. Any other questions about the regular agenda? Okay. Well, folks, that closes out the meeting this evening. I'm going to take my time so they have time to end the Zoom call, but we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night. Bye.